Hello, everyone, and thanks for coming out on this beautiful Saturday morning. There actually is sun now. Look at that. We brought it just for you, Barbara. And so thank you all for coming. I'm Louise Mendinger, a past dean of the AGO chapter. And can everyone who is a past dean raise their hands really high? Just a few. All right. And we also have representing the Merrimack Valley chapter is Jay Lane. He's the dean right now. There he is. I'm so glad. One thing that Barbara asked me to do is she asked if a great souvenir for her would be to have everyone sign this sign that's over here by that's right on the table. And there are 2 names on there already. And there's now going to be 3. And just sign it wherever you can find a space eventually. And it'll be a nice thing for Barbara to have at her home. And as you know, she published a book in the pandemic. She didn't. And what?
Another book.
Another book. Sorry. Sorry about that. I do remember when I met Barbara the first time, I was like, oh man. I had just arrived as a graduate student, and it's like, oh, she's the one with the book, right? That New England book. Wow, I know I was as dumbstruck as I sound right now. And it was a great moment. And I've known her for many, many years. Anytime I need an organ consultant, I call her, and one of the things, and this is going to sound familiar to some of you, she is the one that taught me the phrase, don't send good money after bad. And boy, have I used that many, many times in the past. I never had heard that until Barbara said it. And in many of my situations, organ situations, I've remembered that advice. And it has saved us many times. And so I'm just here to introduce, first of all, to say hello from the Boston chapter. And as we know, Merrimack Valley is also with us, and that has been Barbara's principal chapter for many years, and that's great. And I'm also the chair of the library committee. And that's been a fascinating journey for me. And when we were talking about this particular project, people said, you got to call Scott Huntington, because he can really talk about what she's written and what she's done over the years. And so I called. He said yes immediately. And that was great. So thank you, Scott. There are also books. I have 10 copies from Wayne Leupold, and they're for sale for $55.20. That is a 20% discount from the list price from Wayne Leupold. And I don't want to send any back. Let's just put it that way. We already have a bunch spoken for, and one is going to be given away. Ooh. And the person in charge of that is Jeffrey Mills, right over there. And hold on.
We can do the great reveal now. Check beneath your chair, and if you have a little pink slip, come forward.
Can we get a picture of this?
I was hoping for that.
Is someone sitting in the chair?
Maybe right next to somebody.
Oh, wait. Oh, here it is.
Oh, got it.
Okay.
Oh! Who's got it?
That's
Yay! At the end, yes. Thank you. And thank you, Jeffrey. Good job. And at the end of this, this is going to be the book signing table. So you can buy the books here. We can use PayPal. Good old cash works. And so that will all happen right after we hear from Scott. So Scott Huntington.
Good morning, friends.
Good morning.
We gather here this morning to celebrate the publication of a most significant addition to the bibliography of works celebrating the American organ culture. The Boston chapter of the American Guild of Organists has been blessed with its share of giants over its long and illustrious history. For the most part, they didn't start out as larger-than-life personages, but after arriving here in relative youth and being beguiled by Boston's many charms, they stayed on and grew into a role over long and illustrious careers defined by good works, generosity, and singularity. We're here to honor one of the most legendary, our beloved Barbara. Her professional life encompasses a Renaissance woman's humbleness, grace, and universality of competence in the arts as church musician, builder of pipe organs, consultant, organ historian, founder of the Organ Historical Society and the Boston Organ Library, past dean of the Boston chapter of the American Guild of Organists, and devoted member for 61 years, AGO regional counselor, member of countless committees, both local and national, for the AGO and OHS, an internationally celebrated author. It is for the last that we gather today to celebrate and congratulate Barbara on another seminal publication, Pioneers in American Organ Music, 1860 to 1920, the New England Classicists. Barbara rose to international prominence with the 1979 publication of The Organ in New England, still the definitive work on the subject. Beginning with the organ in colonial times and progressing through the 19th century Boston and New England schools of organ building, with a midpoint chapter dividing the before times and the after times, caused by the arrival of Eberhard Volker's iconoclastic great organ for Boston's celebrated music hall in 1863. This landmark book was partly a culmination to that point of what had been a lifetime of research by the country's foremost scholar of historic New England organ building. But this was to prove just the beginning of a distinguished career as a respected author possessing an especially busy typewriter. In the intervening years, her pen has been prolific, with titles covering such varied topics as the organ music of Brahms, a biography of the chapter's beloved celebrity organist E. Power Biggs, the registration of Baroque organ music, an atlas of hook organs in Maine, the social perspective of the organ at Methuen through both of its two diverse lifetimes, the annotated William Johnson opus list, countless organ monographs, especially about King's Chapel, the colonial organ in America, Trinity Church on the Green in New Haven, the Mormon Tabernacle, and Charles Fisk. Definitive articles have appeared in the New Grove, the Harvard Dictionary of Music, the Organ Yearbook, the Tracker, and the British Institute of Organ Studies Journal, regarding all manner of subjects relating to the pipe organ, its history, construction, pitch, temperament, as well as the music composed for it and its players. The latest book, now just hot off the press, bookends a lifetime of tireless research into the New England School of Organ Building and Playing. While the organ in New England focused on the builders and their instruments, Pioneers puts these instruments into a musical perspective, covering two generations of prominent local organists and composers. The first generation, a group born largely in the 1830s, and who reached local prominence in their 20s and 30s, begins with the Harvard professor and organist John Knowles Payne, his illustrious student Eugene Thayer, and Dudley Buck, George Whiting, and Samuel Whitney. John Payne was a young prodigy, one of the first of Boston's organists to make the pilgrimage to Europe, studying in Berlin with Karl Haupt, who would see a number of American organists making similar pilgrimages in the coming years. Upon his return to Boston, he became university organist at Harvard at the frighteningly young age of 23, scarcely older than some of his students, as well as the organist at Old West, fresh with its impressive new 1861 E and G hook. Students who studied in Europe came home with solid repertoire lists heavy with Bach, Mendelssohn, and Tiala. How do I say his name? Barbara? Tiala? Whatever. Figure prominently on their concert programs instead of the drinking song improvisations and storm fantasies that passed for concert fare at the time. Payne opened the dedication concert of Music Hall's Walker with the toccata in F and the trio sonata in E flat. He insisted his prize student Eugene Thayer be on the program with him as well. When New England Conservatory opened in rented rooms in Music Hall in 1867, Payne was the first professor of composition. And parenthetically, New England Conservatory figures heavily in all of the personages written about in Barbara's book. Payne wrote a number of concert scale works which are still occasionally performed today. George Whiting took his Wanderjahr not to Germany but to England, where he studied with W.T. Best. Best was known for his transcriptions of masterworks, especially of Handel and Mozart, and Whiting brought this taste in concert repertoire home with him. After a brief stint as a cathedral organist in Albany, Whiting became the organist at King's Chapel on the large Simmons and Wilcox, which had replaced the venerable Richard Bridge inside its original handsome case. He leaves King's to become organist at Holy Cross in 1870, leaving soon after the large Hook and Hastings arrives because the pay was too meager. A common problem we still deal with today. After a second trip to Europe for private study with Haupt in 1874, he becomes head of the organ department at NEC in 1875. A popular recitalist at Music Hall, Whiting was tapped by the Cincinnati Music Hall to become their organist on the 1877 E and G Hook and Hastings, their largest organ to date, and briefly the largest organ in the world. When interest in organ recitals there dwindled by 1883, he returns to his former post at NEC. He eventually becomes organist at Immaculate Conception and is responsible for overseeing the major rebuild of the organ by Hook and Hastings in 1902. He retires from that position in 1910 after Gregorian chant replaced the elaborate musical services Whiting had brought to such a high state of perfection. The second generation of organist composers is largely born in the 1850s, young enough to at least biologically be the children of the first generation, and who studied organ playing and compositions with first generation masters. The second group is made up of Arthur Foote, George Chadwick, Horatio Parker, and Henry Dunham. All were associated with the New England Conservatory in one manner or another, either as students or professors. George Chadwick began his association there as a student when the conservatory was renting rooms at Music Hall with its 1872 three-manual Multum in Parvo E and G Hook and Hastings teaching organ. And he's there as a teacher performer and later as a composition instructor when it acquires the monumental St. James Hotel, St. Elsewhere, hospital to television viewers of a certain age, where the organ was rebuilt for their new chamber music hall called Sleeper Hall by George Ryder. The Hook and Hastings was later replaced by an up-to-date electric action three-manual Farrand and Vody in 1896, while the conservatory was under the directorship of the Leipzig musician Carl Felton. Following Felton's dismissal by the board the following year, Chadwick was named director, a post he held to illustrious credit for 33 years. Realizing the school needed larger and more up-to-date quarters, he worked with financier Eben Jordan to erect the current building in 1903, across the street from Symphony Hall. The new recital hall had to have an organ, of course, and a substantial three-manual instrument was designed by Chadwick, Henry Dunham, composition instructor, and Wallace Goodrich, the organist at Trinity Copley. Chadwick's pedigree reads like a who's who, studying with Buck, Thayer, Whiting, and in Germany with Haupt and Reinberger. The young Chadwick once described Whiting as a nervous, irritable man whose patience I sorely tried. And Chadwick's knew the major instruments of Boston and their prestigious builders personally. In its heyday on Huntington Avenue, the conservatory boasted 10 practice organs by George Ryder and E.W. Lane. 2 3-manual teaching organs, possibly the Farron Voties, moved from the former hotel, and the very complete 3-manual Hutchings Votie. Arthur Foote was another second-generation musician of prominence. Unlike his local compatriots with an NEC degree, he was a Harvard graduate and student there of John Payne. A prodigious playing talent, he succeeded Eugene Thayer at Back Bay's First Church, whose remains we now know as First and Second, on the large and brilliant 3-manual Walter designed by Thayer. Foote had the organ replaced by a large 3-manual Hutchings Votie in 1903, built along the symphonic tastes of the day, in which Linwood Farnham described as, quote, softly voiced, and who was generally unimpressed with the result. Foote is probably the most prolific composer of the second generation, and whose compositions were not limited to organ works. Those of us at the Old West concert last night heard Greg Crowell conclude the program with a fascinating and brilliant toccata by Foote. Henry Dunham is the concluding personage of the second generation. He's a student at the conservatory in 1870 at the age of 17, while it was still in its cramped quarters at Music Hall, where his teachers were Payne and Whiting. He becomes a member of the faculty in 1880 and organist at Russell Street Baptist in 1883, where he succeeds in immediately having its brand new 1881 Hook and Hastings moved from the front of the church to the gallery in the back, substantially enlarged, and fitted with all the latest mechanical improvements in key and stop action. He is part of NEC's move to the huge St. James Hotel, where the Hook is enlarged by Ryder and installed in the 600-seat hall. Ryder builds 14 practice organs for the school between 1882 and 1886, including another 3-manual teaching studio organ, all blown by steam power. Dunham eventually meets Edward Searles and becomes an occasional private organist for him at his various residences fitted with grand organs. Dunham's a senior member of the faculty when the new Jordan Hall organ by Hutchins is dedicated in 1903, and again part of the dedication concert in 1920 when it was rebuilt by Ernest Skinner. Dunham was the last of the second generation when he passed away in 1929. While many books dealing with music subjects can be academic and dry, Barbara's inimitable style is immediately accessible. Each biography is information-filled but concise, with a compilation list of the published works for each musician. I learned something new on every page, and I'm not exaggerating when I say I found this book to be a page-turner. The instruments these instruments presided over, and in some cases were musically influenced by, are well covered in what we now call Volume 1, published in 1979. And now Volume 2 puts the instruments in cultural perspective. The Organ in New England and Pioneers of American Organ Music bookend the nearly 50-year writing career of perhaps the most widely published and respected organ scholar of our time. Taken together, the two books take the reader on a musical journey through 3 centuries of the most prolific and influential school of organ culture in our nation. We're also here today to celebrate the author, our beloved Barbar, founder of the Organ Historical Society and Boston's beloved organ library, pillar of the Boston AGO and the New England organ community, whom she has served faithfully for 61 years. The indefatigable doyenne of historic organ research, prolific author, raconteur, organ builder, consultant, mentor, and friend. She was born in Utica, New York, and raised among the organs of John Marklow, the Andrews family, Clarence Morey, and several others best left unmentioned. But she knows who I mean. She received a Bachelor of Music from Westminster Choir College, where she studied under Alexander McCurdy. A Master of Music in Musicology from Boston University, with a thesis paper written on New England organ building in the 18th and 19th centuries. She further coached at the North German Organ Academy with Harald Vogel and the Academy of Italian Organ Music with Luigi Tagliavini. She was organist at the First Religious Society in Newburyport for 45 years. In 1956, she founded the Organ Historical Society after an impromptu meeting in New York City following the AGO National held that year. Past president of that organization twice, she's been awarded this Distinguished Service Award and honorary membership, the Society's highest honor. The American Musical Instruments Society, AMIS, to some of you, awarded her its prestigious Kurt Sachs Award in 1994. Her typewriter has always been smoking, and from it has issued a flood of articles, reviews, and books. She's edited multiple editions of American organ music, including a notable series begun to commemorate our nation's bicentennial. Her file cabinets on early American organophilia would require a small truck to move. With an almost encyclopedic memory, she could drop an engaging lecture or scholarly article at the drop of a hat. Her most characteristic trait is generosity. She's encouraged a score of scholars to follow in her footsteps, myself included. She has selflessly given of her time and energy to countless committees, including several decades of service on the OHS Historic Citations Committee and the Boston Chapter's Organ Advisory Committee. She's guided several generations of researchers with advice, and her generous sharing of voluminous files of materials she has gathered over the decades through her own inexhaustible research. But of several legacies she has created, perhaps one of the most enduring is in this room and upstairs, the Boston Organ Library. Begun with Peggy Biggs sitting in her living room with Barbara sorting through stacks of papers, letters, and reel-to-reel recordings, the repository of which would later become the Boston Organ Library, for which Barbara was the founder and co-curator for many years. This collection is unique among AGO chapters, and ours is the jewel in the Boston chapter's crown. She walked into the C.B. Fisk workshop in October 1961, just as Charles was in the process of moving to Gloucester from Andover and starting his own company. As founder of the OHS and frequent recitalist at its convention and author in the pages of its magazine, she was already a well-known authority on historic instruments, an interest Charlie shared. Initially, she was an office manager, eventually branching out to pre-voicing and small projects on the benches as her schedule permitted, and finally as a full-time flute voicer and occasional on-site finisher. She took a leave of absence to write the organs in New England while the shop was moving to its present modern shop on Condolet Road. Barbara had a small voicing machine set up in her church in Newburyport, which is now my principal voicing machine. For a number of years after leaving Fisk, Barbara did restoration work on the side, one of the best examples being the Woodbury organ in the Regis College Chapel. As a college student in the 1970s, when organ departments were full to the brim and humming with activity, I'd become an OHS member in 1974 as a teenager and immediately became acquainted with the Owen legend through the tracker. I bought volume 1 of the collection A Century of American Organ Music in 1876 to 1976 to use as service music at my college church job on a small 1936 Holtkamp Sparling in a small Anglo-Catholic church in Dunkirk, New York. I spent the bicentennial event along with many of you here in Boston for the AGO Centennial National Convention. The convention was organized by the chapter movers and shakers of the day, most no longer with us, but it was an event now justifiably living in legend. One of the important events for me was one of the lecture choices, Barbara lecturing on the American organ, an instrument without literature, at the First Baptist Church, using its Hook and Hastings with pipework by Green. And I left a page at home, so I'm going to have to make up the end. So when I walked into that church, and you remember this was a convention that was full of legends, like King's College Choir, Harald Vogel, Yuko Hayashi, Andrew Soir. And so I walked into this lecture to see who was already known as a legend to me, who I was there to meet in person. Over the years since then, when I went to work as an organ builder in Vermont, I used to correspond regularly with Barbara, because you wrote letters back in those days, long ones, who would write equally long letters back. And we talked about organs in Western New York, where I grew up, organs in Vermont, that I was surrounded by old organs, and organ building in general, New England organ building in particular, introducing me to Alan Loftman and Ed Bodway and other giants in OHS land. And it was through these early correspondences with Barbar that my interest in historic organs was kindled. And I became an organ restorer because of that, rather than being a builder of new organs. So we gather here today to pay honor to one of our most beloved friends, Barbara. It's been a pleasure and an honor to know you all these years, 40 actually going on. And everyone here congratulates you proudly on this truly wonderful book. We love you.
Wow. Can we also applaud Scott? That was a fascinating. I'm kind of speechless after that, honestly. There was so much that I've been here for 40 years, and I feel like I'm just arriving. And I knew some of that, and yet it was so great to hear you after that. And so I'm not kidding. I feel kind of speechless, but that will pass. And so what we're going to do right now, we actually, courtesy of the Merrimack Valley chapter, we have some champagne. And so we're going to, let's see if we can get Jay. We're going to pass, and we can get some helpers.
That will take a few minutes. Maybe now's the time for signing things and looking at the book table while we get that ready.
Yeah, and before we do that, Carl would like to talk to us about the organ library, because we have signs that are going to take you there. You can go and see the organ library. You can even buy things, and we're going to also talk about how you can buy the book.
Okay, I'll do that. Yeah.
And Carl Klein, who is the library administrator currently, and many of you know Carl. He is an employee at CD Fisk. He has a church job in Chelmsford at All Saints Episcopal Church, and so Carl.
Thank you. So kind of a disassociated list of things that I should talk about today. One is the library is that way. It's not upstairs anymore. It's that way. It's at the end of this hallway. You go all the way down and you turn left, and then you go further down, and it's in that room. So Barbara has always been an inspiration to me personally. And I've followed in her footsteps a couple of ways. At the Fisk factory, because I do some of the same things. I'm a voicer at Fisk, like Barbara was. And at the library here, and also having a church job for many years, like she did. And so I feel this kinship. Since 2014, I've been the administrator at the library, and I guess I should talk about what the library is and does and has and doesn't have. We're primarily a collection of organ music. We're one of the largest and best collections of organ repertoire in the country. At one time, we were like the third largest, next to New York Public and the National, whatever it's called. I'm not sure that's true anymore, but something like that. We have a lot of organ literature. It is not a lending library. It is a permanent collection, and you can't just come in and copy things that are under copyright. I want to make that clear. However, we do have sales, and right now we have huge inventory because over the last 3 years, so many people have retired, died, cleaned out their mother or father's music. I have so many boxes of donations that I can't possibly keep up with them, of organ music, most of which goes into our sales. The easiest way to buy things from us, and by the way, we have great stuff. I mean, it's all the standard literature, and most of it's in pretty good shape. Because we have so much that I have to throw away the stuff that's in bad shape, unless it's something rare or something like that. The best way to buy it is not to come and go through the drawer, because there are now 25 drawers of sales stuff. I mean, it's just ridiculous. You don't want to do that. What you want to do is go to the website and look in the list and find something that you need or want, and send me an email, and I'll get it out to you. That said, I would love for you to see the library, our little room at the end of the hall, and we'll do that after we have a little champagne. And I'll be available for questions at the library for a little while.
Yes. So from our sales department, I have 4 copies of the 1776 to 1876 that I thought we could give away to 4 lucky people who rushed the table first. And then I have these 2 for sale, a John Knowles Payne. This is a nice modern edition that Wayne has done. And then I have this old edition of Horatio Parker, which belonged to Francis Snow. So we have so many donors at the library. I have just stacks and stacks of donations yet to go through, and I even have now 9 boxes in my voicing room at Fisk that need to come down here, that have come in the last 3 weeks. So it never ends, and it's been this way for like 3 years. But anyway, these 2 are for sale. I will put a price if you feel motivated to bid on them. Especially this one. This is interesting.
Are you selling
The books?
Yeah.
You can use
PayPal?
You can use PayPal to buy the books. ORGLIB at bu.edu or live at bu.edu.
Carl, what's in the Horatio Parker album?
Well, you'll have to look at it. Who knows?
$10 bill.
Yeah, a $10 bill. And I also, on the table in the library, I've set out music from our permanent collection of all the composers in Barbara's book, all 9. Not all of their music, but as much as I could easily put on the table. So there's things to look at once you come. You can buy the book. from us, orglib@bu.edu. That's the PayPal address. And we'll settle up.
Okay, great. Okay, so right now, does everyone have? We're almost there. Almost. Oh, it's a welcome sign. So what we're going to do is, for right now, we're going to we'll have a series of champagne toasts. If you have a story or something you'd like to share, I have a handheld microphone, and we can share those stories. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to hand one right now while we're waiting for the champagne. I see that Claire wants to share something. 1 second.
I just want to share a story about Barbara. I moved here in 2003. I'm a St. Louis girl. And as Scott said, it's a little daunting to join the Boston AGO with the legends and the talent that are in the chapter. Somewhere along the line after the 2014 convention, I learned that in the library there was a hard copy history of the chapter written by H. Winthrop Martin. And around COVID times, I got the idea that that should be digitized. And I couldn't scan it in, and I had to type in the entire thing. So one day I came down and I got the book, and Carl said to me, "You're the first person that Barbara has ever released this to take out of the library. Don't lose it." So with that in my head, it took me a couple years to transcribe it for various reasons. Along the way, I had seen that there were other projects listing deans of our chapter. And this is where Barbara particularly comes in, because I had the names of the deans. I had short biographies. I did not have pictures. So I wrote to Barbara and I said, "How do you best get this?" And she recommended genealogy websites. So off I go. And I was able, with her inspiration, to get pictures of everybody who has been our past dean. And Barbara kept encouraging me, "Look here, look there." I consider Barbara a mentor. Many of you have longer histories, but Barbara has been quite a mentor. And she's even to this day recommending that I get our deans on Wikipedia, so that we do this work and get it out to the wider world, because there are people on Wikipedia that have similar names but aren't our organists. So Barbara, I thank you for your mentorship. I thank you for pushing me, I think. And I treasure what you've inspired me to lead. Kind of follow in your footsteps, but no one could do that. But thank you.
Hi, Barbara. Vicki Sirota, and I will give you our address. We're in Maine now. And I was dean. I was trying to think. It must have been like 86 to 88 or something like that, because 1990 was the national convention here. And wow. And I was the coordinator, and that was a big deal. So, but what I just wanted to say to Barbara is that in the late 70s, when I was working on my doctoral work and I'd finished all of the incredible requirements that the BU School of Music, as it was called then, had, trying to come up with a dissertation, and I was thinking of really cool topics, always with male composers. And my sister said, "Why not a female composer?" And I basically thought, there aren't any, because I had never heard of a female composer mentioned in any music history class I had ever taken, at Oberlin or at BU. So I went to Barbara Owen, and she immediately, I think the next day, came up with 3 to 6 people, women, and I had to search all over to find music, and I went to the Boston Public Library and found 6 Garton Liter of Fanny Mendelssohn Hensel. And they wouldn't let me Xerox, so I came with my manuscript paper, copied them out, played it at home. My husband, composer Bob Sirota, said, that's stunning. And it just was beautiful. So that started my project. I never would have come up with that topic if it wasn't for Barbara. And I knew that she would know. I couldn't go to my music history professors. They didn't take the work of women seriously at all. So I am so grateful. I wrote in the pipings in November, so you have that story. But I'm so grateful to her because she is not only a fount of wisdom, as everyone is saying, but she has her tentacles out through all of history. It's just astonishing. So if you have any questions, always ask her. Okay, who's next?
The only story I have is a very silly one. In 1987, on the first research trip that I joined that had Bob Glasgow, Jack Bethards, Tom Murray, a bunch of people, we were privileged enough to see the organ at Blenheim Palace, a pretty famous 1891 Father Willis organ. And it's the first time I'd also met Carlo Curley, an incredibly larger-than-life figure in many ways. And he was tearing through the organ, and when he finally finished whatever march or popular song he was doing, he got off the console, and he came to the group of this, me and all of these other, these truly illustrious figures, and he went to a woman of small, distinguished stature and said, "Oh, you must be Barbara Owen. I just think the world of everything you've ever written." Unfortunately, it was Orpha Oxy. Otherwise, I cannot build on anything else that anyone else has said. I mean, Barbara is just a light unto all of us, and I'm so glad she's here today and us with her.
If I could just say a word. Not only is Barbara a friend of the organ world, but she looks about God's creation, and she is a friend, as many of you know, she's a friend of cats. And a wonderful volunteer for the Merrimack Valley Feline Rescue Society. And she did something great for me not too long after my husband and I moved to Newburyport. We were having lunch together, and she said, "Joyce, there is a real cat over in the Rescue Society." She knew that I loved black cats, long-haired black cats. And of course, she had a key to the place. And, and the next morning, we went over there, and she was volunteering to change the cat litter bins on Saturday morning or something. So I went with her. And I went in this room, and here was this little cat. And I took him out of his cage and put him on my shoulder. And my heart absolutely melted. And he moved like a fox, and the tip of his tail was solid white, but otherwise he was black. And he was one of my adorable companions for around 20 years. And I owe that to Barbara. And one other thing, if you want a friend and you don't really know Barbara, just go her way. She did a marvelous thing for me one day, which is, she's done many wonderful things for me, but one day, years ago in the 90s, I was just beside myself with suffering. And I finally picked up the phone and called her. I was that distraught. And immediately she said, "We'll go over to my church and play the organ." Because immediately when I moved to Newburyport that very day, she brought me a key to her church and said, "Go in and play the organ anytime." She said, "First thing, go to my church, play the organ, and then I'll meet you at Angie's for lunch." And by the time lunch was over, by the time I played the organ, and then met her for lunch, I was restored. So I've just never forgotten that day and that incident that changed from complete clouds to, let's go forward. Okay, who else? Thank you.
What about, oh, that's right. There we go.
And
Don't they have a word?
here can Barbara have a word? Ah, Barbara. Do you want the handheld or do you want to stand here? Well, she's already finished her champagne. Oh my goodness, we'll have to remedy that one. She's not driving.
I will keep it short and sweet. And the sweet part is just seeing all these wonderful friends of mine here, some of whom I haven't seen in a while, all of whom have achieved wonderful things on their own. Every one of them could stand up and like some of the ones who already did, say what they have done and learned and so forth and so on with regard to the organ and its music. That was what grabbed me when I was a teenager and had a sort of summer job playing a wonderful 1852 Hoch organ. And that sort of led me to learn more about them. I was not the founder of the Organ Historical Society, but I was one of the founders of the Organ Historical Society. And in the days long before email, we corresponded with each other either on the phone or by plain old snail mail, and shared stop lists and experiences and so forth and so on and so on. And when people do that about something or other, they eventually get together. And we did. That's exactly how the AGO was founded back at the beginning of the 20th century by a bunch of organists who felt that they wanted to share with each other and help each other and teach each other. And some of, I think almost all but one, perhaps, of the characters, and they were characters, in my recent book, were in that category. People ask me, how did you choose those particular subjects? Because there were a lot of people active in the organ world in the late 19th century. And I said, well, I had 3 criteria. They had to be good recitalists. They had to be teachers. And they had to be composers. So some people that some of you probably heard of are left out because they didn't have all those 3 wonderful characteristics. And they simply grabbed me, and I wanted to learn more about them because while some of them had biographies and written, and some of them had actually written their own autobiographies, the plain truth is the fact that they spent their Sundays on an organ bench for most of their lives were ignored. And I don't like things that are ignored. That's why I did a little study of Brahms's organ music, because of course we know Brahms for his symphonies and his marvelous Requiem, which is what grabbed me when I was in college and singing in the Westminster choir in a performance of that in New York. I thought, oh my God, this is really great music. This is really a great composer. And there again, I discovered that he wrote organ music, which most people ignored, so I digged into that one. And that's sort of been, people say, well, why do you write about this, that, and the other thing? I say, well, the only this, that, and the other thing that I write about are things that really interest me and really grab me and ask me questions that I want to try to answer. So everything that I have written has sort of been based on that. And someone once said to me, well, have you written any fiction? And I said, no, I've read a lot of fiction, but what I write about is people that to me are more interesting than fiction, and certainly a certain musical instrument is much more interesting to me than, let's say, there's a lot of books that come out now about pop music and jazz. Forget about it. But their authors probably are motivated the same way that I was, to write about and study about something that was of really great personal interest to them. So, you can ask me questions, but I don't always have the answers for them. And when I came to this probably final book, I just came back to Boston. I mean, I've always been around Boston ever since I did my graduate work here in musicology. And we had some very good professors in musicology, by the way, and one of them gave me some very interesting information. I've never forgotten about it. One is, you can't understand anything, whether it's music or instruments, unless you know the background. So I've always tried to put background into there, because I've read actually some biographies and so forth that do not use the background, and it does not tell you the whole story. So that was an important lesson I learned. And then another professor that we had, and it was right here at BU that did my master's in musicology. Don't forget, 2/3 of the word history is story. So I've also tried to write the story behind some of the things that I've chosen as subjects, or sometimes they choose me. So in a nutshell, that's why I've written what I've written, and I guess been pretty good about it. When I was in high school, I had a wonderful English teacher. I got straight A's in English. Didn't do so well in math. But she had wanted me to go to college and major in English. And when I told her I'd been accepted to a music school, I think she was a bit disappointed. She was a wonderful teacher, by the way, Hill House High School. But she is long gone, of course, but I think someplace she may be looking down on me and thinking that, well, I did a pretty good job of what she wanted me to do. And she had written a couple of very good books herself. So, it's always the influence. I have a sort of little list of favorite sayings, and one of them was a saying by a tennis champion who had just won an award. And when she was giving her speech, she said, and which had been written down, which is why I saw this, whatever you have achieved, don't ever forget that someone helped you. And she was so right. And I realized some of you have helped me, and I hope that I've helped some of you. But we're all in this together, and we're all united by not only our favorite instrument, but also the music written for it, and the people who write the music, and all the rest of that jazz. That's why we're here today. But whatever I have done and whatever you have done, someone helped you. So if you have a chance to help a student or a friend in any projection, I remember teaching a piano player how to play the pedals once, because she'd been recruited to play the organ at her church. So that was, a very small help, but she went on to be a pretty good organist. It's those little things sometimes that you don't even think of, and some of the things that some of you have even spoken about, where various of you and certainly I have tried to pay that back when I could in my seemingly long life. And hope you will all go out and help somebody if they need the help. I did this in the library, and I've done this in my church, and it's always given me warmth. And it's given me great warmth when someone else has helped me, because they have. So I guess that's the one lesson of a long life that I can give you, and I'm really here because of all of you and other people who have helped me and who I know are going on and helping your own students and your associates and your AGO chapter members and whatever. Don't ever give up, because there's usually someone there who will either help you or that you can help them. And when you're pushing 90, you can say that.
Glasses while you're standing. I want to have two toasts. One is for Barbara and also for Scott, who did a great job. But the first one, of course, is for our honoree. And Barbara, thank you for so much, and thank you for this new book and inspiring us that in a pandemic you can actually apply yourself and write a book. And it's a fantastic thing. So thank you. And here I'm raising my glass to Barbara Owen. Hear, hear.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so happy to have so many friends.
And can I also raise a glass to our speaker, is to Scott, because there's just what Barbara was talking about, the helping is something that has inspired Scott to do great work throughout his career, and to always, whenever he presents a paper, and if you've ever seen any of his writing, even like in TAO, it's always interesting. And so thank you, Scott. And what we're going to do now is, first we can sit down. There are a couple of jobs that people need to do. One is to sign this poster, and we're going to give that to Barbara so that she can have a memento. She can
frame it.
And she's going to frame it, so right pretty. And also, we have these books for sale, and Barbara, we have a chair up here for you to sign the books. Now, you can buy them. Carl will tell us. We can buy them through PayPal, and it is, and I'll put, it's, here's the address right here, and I will put it up here on the book table. So these are all, these were sent to us by Wayne Leupold, who is the publisher of this book. And so I don't want to send any books back. And he's offering them for a discount, 20% discount, $55.20. So if you have correct change, that'd be great. So you have, you can do, if you have correct change, we can do cash. But I think Carl prefers PayPal.
Right, you can take cash if they have it, and I'll do the PayPals.
Okay, are you going to be up here, or are you going to be at the library?
Go to the library and open up. So folks can wander down to the library if you want to see.
Do you want to take a box of these books?
No, keep them here so Barbara can sign.
So Barbara can sign. Okay, great. So now there is a mountain of food back there. Finish your champagne and have some food.
And then have some more.
And then have some more because Jay brought a lot. And we're all just going to sort of float out of here. And you're going to make a plug for the book. Excellent.
Everything I told you about the history of these composer organists in Boston came out of that book. That's just scratching the surface of interesting details making these composers real in this book. And especially for all of you and us living in and around Boston, every one of these composers worked in a place that we know, that is still here. Some of the organs, like Holy Cross, Immaculate Conception, these are organs that we know, that these guys knew when they were brand new, and we know them now. And I cannot emphasize this strongly enough. This really is a page turner of a book. You start one chapter, you don't want to stop until you've gotten to the end of that guy's life. And particularly for people from New England Conservatory, a lot of the early history of New England Conservatory involves every one of these gentlemen. And I know there's a lot of students of NEC that don't really know the fascinating history of that school. And there's a story there that needs to appear in the tracker one day about its performer teachers, its curriculum, and its organs. So really, I cannot emphasize strongly enough what a fascinating book this is. And if you own the organ in New England, this really is the companion volume too. So buy one.
I have mine already. All right. Thank you. And thanks to John Roper, by the way, for putting this on Facebook Live.
Yay.
Did you notice that?
Oh my gosh! Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Eileen, can you just before we go?
Yeah.
Or just
She's
first.
the national president.
She's the national president.
Well, I bring greetings from National Council. I'm so honored to have been elected president. I am deeply, deeply honored. And I'm thrilled to be here today because when I was a kid in high school, growing up in Gloucester, Mass, Barbara was my mentor. And I grew up in the Fisk organ shop. That's where I got my start in music. And it's just such a great pleasure to honor Barbara today for her marvelous, marvelous work. And we all share great stories about our friendships with Barbara. And it has been an important part of all of our lives. So congratulations, Barbara. God bless. We love you.